In July 1518, on the narrow streets of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Troffea stepped out of her house and began to dance. For nearly a week, Troffea continued without pause. Her feet were bleeding and her body was visibly failing, yet she remained trapped in a frantic, involuntary motion that allowed for no rest. The phenomenon was contagious. Within a month, approximately 400 citizens had been drawn into the same relentless, exhausting cycle. This was a medical emergency, not a celebration. Dozens of people began to drop dead in the streets, their bodies giving out from heart attacks and strokes brought on by days of non-stop exertion. The situation broke the medical logic established at the time. Local physicians watched a lethal epidemic of motion spread through the city, yet their understanding of anatomy offered no explanation for why it began or how to stop it. Looking for a physical cause, the city's doctors bypassed supernatural theories and diagnosed the dancers with hot blood. They believed an internal fever was driving the compulsion. Their solution was a literal death trap. They decided the only way to end the plague was for the victims to dance until the hot blood was completely burned out of their systems. To facilitate this, authorities built wooden stages. They hired musicians and strongmen to hold the dancers upright so they could continue moving. But this state-sponsored marathon backfired. The music drew in more victims, rapidly increasing the death toll. By treating a medical crisis as a public event, the city leaders effectively turned a psychological breakdown into a self-sustaining massacre. Modern investigators are working with a cold case. Without biological samples from the 16th century, we have to rely on historical records to test different theories of what actually happened. One popular hypothesis is ergot poisoning. This occurs when rye is contaminated with a specific fungus that can cause hallucinations similar to the effects of LSD. This diagram highlights the problem. While ergotism causes altered states of mind, it also results in rigid muscle spasms and gangrene. It would be biologically impossible for someone suffering from ergotism to maintain the fluid, sustained motion reported in the 1518 accounts. A more likely factor was the cultural environment. The people of Strasbourg lived in fear of Saint Vitus, a figure believed to have the power to punish sinners by forcing them into a manic dance. In a society defined by deep religious devotion, the psychological terror of this specific curse could manifest as a physical reality. Believing you were cursed could actually trigger the very symptoms you feared. This leads to the most accepted theory: mass psychogenic illness. This is a collective trance state, where extreme external stress causes a group to lose control over their physical movements. The stressors in 1518 were immense. The city was struggling with famine, with severe poverty, and the rapid spread of diseases like smallpox and syphilis. The population was at a breaking point. The plague was a collective mental snap. It was a moment where the weight of constant trauma became so heavy that it finally broke through the mind and expressed itself through the body. The outbreak finally came to an end in September. Survivors were taken to a mountain shrine to pray for relief, marking a shift from physical exertion to religious ritual. This transition likely worked because it offered a psychological exit. The dancers either found comfort in the ritual, or their bodies finally reached a state of total physical collapse. The dancing plague has since moved from a historical oddity to a serious case study in the field of psychology. The event stands as a grim illustration of how the body can physically manifest the effects of intense, prolonged psychological stress. It remains relevant today because it shows that unaddressed collective trauma doesn't just disappear. If the pressure is high enough, it will find a way to express itself, often in extreme ways. The events of 1518 provide a physical record of a societal breakdown, an involuntary collective reaction from a population pushed to the edge of its endurance.